have come here to chew bubble gum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubble.
Gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon. Belly up to the bar, we've kept your seat, and it's great to see you back. Blaine is going to be your bartender tonight. He pulls with the best of them, and the smoking lamp is lighted. We don't water our drinks, just like we don't water our conversation, politics, religion, crime, culture, economics, race, sex, science, law. We talk about it all here at the saloon. Nothing is sacred. All that we ask is that you flush the toilet, jiggle the handle, and don't forget to tip your waitress. Tonight, mothers of kids killed by illegal aliens. American media maggots are ignoring the Rockville, Maryland rape incident. Do you know how many older kids, older illegals, are in your child's classroom, like, say, Rockville? Nancy Pelosi knows nothing and has nothing. Let's laugh at Democrats. And of course, we're going to start things off by happy stories and good times. Although this is not necessarily an original kind of thing, I would go so far as to say that it's a backup, essentially, to what I had before. Now, here's the funny thing. When you assemble a show, and I've got lots of pieces of paper and 3 computer screens looking at me here. Lots of paper here. And the biggest thing that I've discovered after doing a show is a lot of times I do some of the peripheral stuff first, and then I end up not having enough time for the major story that I want to talk about. The major story tonight, as far as I'm concerned, is the Trump surveillance update. And what I'm going to do for you, and it's taken me a long time to assemble it because there's so much stuff going on, and trust me when I tell you, it's all intertwined, and it's all about detail. And it's another reason that I'm thankful to the SHR Radio Network for giving me 2 hours in order to go into this thing in depth. It can get a little bit inside baseball, and guilty, I'm holding my hand up right now. Things can be a bit dense, but I want to explain to you in as comprehensive a way as possible as to how and why all of this is happening. And the reason it's happening, and the reason that I'm emphasizing it, and I will continue to emphasize it until the day I cack and can no longer broadcast, which could be tomorrow, what the hell, is it's important. It's important to this nation. It's important to our freedom. It's important to our security. It's important to anyone that is an actual resident and a taxpayer in the United States of America. It's where all your money goes. It ends up where Ken McClinton is in D.C. And Ken McClinton, by the way, the Exceptional Conservative, just finished the Exceptional Conservative show. And thank you for the nice intro, Ken, to this show this evening. And thank you for letting me just spill my little guts all over your show and for messing it up last night. Really appreciate it. Although I have to say I did have a good time and I laughed a lot. So I suppose that counts for something. But anyway, after I get through a few things that I'd like to portray up front. Then I'd like to get into the update that I have with regard to Trump surveillance. In my opinion, it's extremely important, and you're only given a fraction of the information that's out there. And what I try to do is to assemble it for everyone, listening live, listening in the chat room right now, and listening on podcast. I attempt to assemble it in as much of a chronological order as I can, with attributions. So again, my mother said, never forget your manners. I'd like to thank everyone in chat right now. We have Mary Brockman. Her chair is open. Nobody's messed with it. You can tell it's Mary Brockman's chair because it has embroidery on the back with a name. I'd like to welcome Jersey Girl Sandy in there. And I see White Mamba is in there. So good to see. And, no, that's not Jersey Girl Sandy. Oh, my God, how I confused. My major Apipolyloggies. That's from Clockwork Orange, Malcolm McDowell. Kerry Donovan, how can I do that? I grandly apologize to you. But you know what? Let's not wait. I'm going to try to get into the meat of it all if I can. But let's start out with part B of...
It's time for happy stories and good times.
This happy story comes on the heels of the one that I indicated last Tuesday week. And this one is family of dead burglar complains about homeowner's son using an AR-15. If you remember that particular story and that particular incident from about a month ago, the grandfather, this is from thedailycaller.com, the grandfather of a dead teenage robber criticized an Oklahoma man for using an AR-15 to defend himself against the group of burglars past Friday. Leroy Schumacher, the grandfather, said there was no reason his grandson had to die over the attempted robbery, reports KTUL in Oklahoma. What these boys did was stupid, Schumacher told KTUL. They knew they could be punished for it, but they did not deserve to die. Pregnant pause. For obvious reasons. Jacob Redfern, his grandson, and two other teens, Maxwell Cook and Jake Woodruff, were fatally shot by Zach Peters when they broke into Peters' home on March 27th. Armed with an AR-15, Peters shot all three of the would-be robbers. At this point, I see no problem. Wagner County Sheriff's deputies arrived on the scene to find all three teenagers dead. Police recovered a knife and brass knuckles on the bodies. Schumacher said it was unfair for Peters to shoot at the robbers because they only had brass knuckles on them. Brass knuckles against an AR-15. Come on, who was afraid for their life? Schumacher said. Schumacher protested that Peters hasn't been charged for shooting at his grandson and the other potential burglars. Potential? Bullshit alert. Schumacher believes people have a right to protect their homes, but they shouldn't kill people that break into them. There's got to be a limit to that law. I mean, he shot all three of them. There was no need for that, Schumacher said. These boys' families are going to have to suffer with this for the rest of their lives. We have to live with this for the rest of our lives. Stop. I've tried to read this as seriously as possible, but hello, Darwin Award. If you're stupid enough in Oklahoma to break into a person's home, and my guess is they probably didn't go, hello, Candygram from Mongo. No, they probably kicked in the door. And when you enter a residence uninvited, tumultuously, in Oklahoma, I would wager you can probably expect to get shot. And shot is exactly what they got. So, burglars or not, they were criminals and they were burglars. And it's dark, so tell me, how is it that the person armed with a gun is supposed to magically get into the mind of all three of those particular teenagers and know what it is that they have and what they haven't? That they have brass knuckles and they don't have much more. How is it that you're supposed to be able to know to sync brainwaves with people in order to do that? Deputies said the shooting looks like it was in self-defense, but they will be investigating just to be sure. It looks like self-defense from the preliminary investigation, but that's all speculative, Wagner County Deputy Nick Mahoney said. There's some speculation as to whether or not that stand your ground law applies in this case. The simple answer is I don't know. There are certain things that are called the Castle Doctrine throughout various states. I'm not familiar with the state of Oklahoma, and the Castle Doctrine essentially is this. I know it exists in Texas, and I believe it exists in Florida. White Mamba in chat, you can probably tell me whether you know that's true or not. The Castle Doctrine is this. Your home is your castle. You can defend it in any way that you see fit, up to and including deadly force. You can be guaranteed that people that enter into your home violently are not there simply to have a chat with you, because they long for communications between like-minded individuals. Stop. Let me give you another bit of insight, having been a law enforcement officer for 41 years. Teenagers, young people with a gun are some of the most dangerous people on the planet. Let me give you an insight as to what I would customarily tell any of my trainees when I was a training officer. And they came and sat with me in my automobile. Because as far as I was concerned, when you're a trainee in my car, it's mine. And I'm going to train you as vigorously as I possibly can. And one of the things that I said, amongst many other salient points, is I would probably more readily drop the hammer on a teenager, a young individual possessing deadly force, than I would someone in their 40s. And now, I'm sure at this point your mouth is open, it's agape, there's drool drizzling down to the floor, and you're saying, BZ, how can you say that? That's a terribly, terrible thing, terribly judgmental thing to say. And I would say, have you happened to look down a weapon recently? The wrong end of one. I have any number of times. And I've had to apply deadly force. And I've been cleared of it. That said, a teenager, a young person with a gun, is one of the most deadly animals on the planet. And especially now, these days. A reason for reading this to you, because when you're out in the street, you have to consider all the parameters when you're responding to various calls. And apparently the sound went out, and apparently the sound came back. My guess is you guys probably refreshed or something like that. In any event, those are my thoughts on that particular situation. Now we're going to go to a very interesting little bit from Hannity. And when we allow so many illegal immigrants into this country, you're going to have various issues. Issues that, as far as the leftists and Democrats, and unfortunately some of the police chiefs and sheriffs around the nation are concerned, it's not a particular issue. It's not a particular big deal. I submit, yes, it is. It absolutely is. Listen to the things that occurred to the son of this mother. It's staggering.
My name is Laura Wilkerson, and my family became a victim of illegal alien crime on November 16, 2010. My youngest son, Joshua, was a senior in high school and had his whole life ahead of him. He went to school and never returned. At trial, the killer testified on his behalf and gave exact testimony on how he systematically killed Joshua. He first threw a punch in the face so that Joshua's vision was messed up and he could not fight back.
Listen to that. Listen to how systematic this is.
He next kneed Joshua in an abdomen so that he would go to the ground. Josh went to the ground as his spleen was sliced in half. Next, he took a closet rod and beat Josh over the head again and again until the rod broke in 4 pieces. He waited and he watched him die. He tied Josh's body up, stuffed it in the back seat of our truck, bought gas, dumped Josh in a field and set his body on fire. The killer went home, took a shower, and went to see a movie. And you talked about fear, that illegals are afraid to come out of the shadows. Do you want to know what fear is? When somebody reaches in your house and grabs your littlest kid and tortures them, you're afraid of everything.
That was the heartbreaking congressional testimony of Laura Wilkerson, where she was talking about the death of her son, Josh. Laura is here with us tonight. Also with us, Agnes Giboney is with us. Her son, Ronald, was shot and killed by an illegal immigrant back in 2002. Also, Marianne Mendoza, her son, Sergeant Brandon Mendoza, was killed in 2014 by an illegal immigrant as well in a car crash. Ladies, thank you all for being with us. Our hearts, our prayers go out to all of you. At the start of this show, I put up numbers. Those are statistics. This is real life, real experience. I feel, especially in the cases of when these guys had criminal records, that your government betrayed you. What do you want to say to Mr. Trump?
They did betray us. Every one of our kids should be here with us today. This seems like fun to be here. It's not. I'd rather be home with my kid any minute. And this administration and Hillary, if she's chosen, her administration will do nothing for Americans. And I really believe that Mr. Trump will do everything for the Americans.
By the way, this is pre-election, coming up to the election itself, and this particular mother is sitting directly next to Donald Trump.
During your trial, the guy that killed your son said he was proud. He said, because he accused Josh of kicking his dog, and that his culture is very different than ours, and he was really excited that he had killed your son. I couldn't believe that when I read that.
It's horrific as a mom to sit there and see exactly what he did to your child. He was happy about it. And let me tell you what, he was so unremorseful that just like the people that are flooding over our border will cut your head off in a minute, it can happen to your family just like it happened to mine.
Yeah.
That's heinous enough. It really is. But with that said, I go back to the dailycaller.com. You and I, we inherently know that this is true. Because we have brains that we can, two brains that we can rub together. One, not like your average leftist who's predominantly a stegosaurus with a brain the size of a walnut and a ganglion of nerves in their hips to make their rear legs walk, and all they think about all day are emotions. We have to deal in facts because we're pragmatic and we're practical. We're conservatives. That's how we're made. That's why I became a conservative, because I'm pragmatic and I'm practical and I have a brain. And I can think and reason things out, and I don't fall back on emotions all the time. From dailycaller.com, however, you remember the Rockville, Maryland rape, of course? Just about a week ago or so, 2 illegal immigrants, 118, 117, raped a 14-year-old girl. And I'm having a cut coming up directly after this that you're going to have to gird your loins for when you listen to this, not because the story is so terrible, but because of the facts that are involved that are revealed that these people that are adults, alleged educators, know about and are allowing to occur in your classroom. And I'm going to have a question. But before that, the American media maggots purposely withhold information because they don't want to upset people and they don't want to reveal the truth. As I indicated from the dailycaller.com, virtually uncovered, New York Times admits CNN and MSNBC are ignoring the Rockville rape. By Peter Hassan, MSNBC, CNN, and every other major network but Fox News are keeping their viewers in the dark about the alleged violent rape of a 14-year-old girl by 2 illegal immigrants. The New York Times conceded in an article about Fox News on Saturday. The 2 alleged rapists, age 17 and 18, were enrolled as freshmen in a public high school in Rockville, Maryland. After having been detained and then released by federal immigration authorities, despite being in the country illegally. This, I'm telling you, was standard policy under the prior administration, the Barack Hussein Obama administration. The suspects then allegedly forced the girl into a bathroom stall at school and made her perform oral sex on them while they took turns raping and sodomizing her as she cried out for them to stop. According to police reports, police found blood and DNA on the scene. That's enough of that. a heinous crime occurs, maybe I should throw the word alleged in there to comfort the souls of those who are easily offended amongst us. But we have the New York Times admitting that they're not covering this. And I think you and I know absolutely why. Now, I prepped you for this. And I want you to listen very carefully. This is a show with Judge Jeanine Pirro. And I have to say one thing at the get-go. Her voice can drive me nuts. Listening to her after a time is almost as bad as listening to Fran Drescher or perhaps really long nails on a chalkboard. Or maybe taking a tin fork and opening your mouth and rattling it around in your teeth. It's almost that bad. But listen to the situation in Maryland with regard to illegal immigrants and your children.
The shocking case of a 14-year-old girl allegedly raped by two illegal immigrants in a Maryland school got me thinking. Do you know who's in school with your children? If you think that your school administrator, principal, has your back, think again.
They don't, and they won't tell you. And as far as they're concerned, you have no need to know, parents.
Joining me now is Chester County, Pennsylvania Sheriff Bunny Welsh, and from the town of Lynn, Massachusetts, the Mayor Judith Flanagan Kennedy. All right, I'm going to start with the sheriff. We don't have a lot of time, and I'm going to bring you both back because I love this issue. All right, Sheriff, Montgomery County, where this 14-year-old was allegedly raped. I choose to believe she was raped, and we can, say they're allegedly the criminals. They choose, they're a sanctuary county. That means they won't honor a federal detainer from ICE. That means that they're not going to tell ICE where these guys are, and they're going to let them roam freely, correct?
And if they're not going to tell ICE, do you think any of these people, alleged educators in a school, are going to tell you who's in your classroom with your child?
Correct. And this is a tragedy on many levels because the greatest job of the government is to protect the citizens. And the citizens here, whether it's the protection of at the border or in your communities or our most vulnerable citizens, our children in school, the system failed every step of the way.
The system failed. What should be... I have just a question that I'm going to proffer to you live in chat. And to everyone else, by the way, I see everyone is in fact here, so welcome to everyone. Should not school that you send your children off to every day, should not that be one of, if not the safest places with which to entrust your child?
This case.
Okay, so for those people who say, wait a minute, the cops have to tell them where these criminals are. They're illegals, they're committed crimes, they've been deported, they're convicted. You as a sheriff can tell my viewers that if their boss says they can't, they can be investigated and brought up on charges, correct? Even if they're a cop.
That's correct.
Okay, good.
That's
now,
correct.
To the mayor. Mayor, you are the mayor of Lynn, Massachusetts, and you pretty much oversee the 5th largest school district in the state of Massachusetts. Now, you have one of the biggest immigrant communities in Massachusetts. What, if any, impact does the immigrant community have on the schools in Massachusetts?
Listen to this.
It's been a tremendous strain on the city's budget to accommodate all of the new people that we've had in the system.
Okay, what kind of strain and to whom?
Well, for example, we're operating 5 schools that are more than 100 years old, and we are projected to add approximately 500 more newcomer students who are not speaking primarily English in the coming year.
Okay, so if they're, first of all, who's building the new schools? Who's paying for it?
We tried. We had a debt exclusion vote on last week, and the measure failed 2-1. So we have to squeeze kids into the existing schools now.
Okay, good. So the impact on the students in terms of the strain is there are more kids per classroom, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and if someone's not speaking English, that requires more time the teacher has to spend if you don't have more teachers on the kids who aren't speaking as fluent as the American kids, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so somebody comes in who's an immigrant. How do you know what class to put them in if they don't speak English?
They do an initial evaluation, and many of these children who are coming in stop their formal education at 3rd grade, but they are growing well into adulthood. And
Did you catch that? The growing well into adulthood. Just like the 18-year-old in a class with a 14-year-old.
And we can't put them in a 3rd grade classroom.
We can't put them in a 3rd grade classroom.
We had one man with graying temples. I couldn't see putting that person in a 3rd grade class. So they go in as freshmen in high school.
They go in as freshmen in high school. A man with gray hair, probably in his 40s, 30s, 40s, 50s.
Whoa! Someone with graying temples in 3rd grade? But you put them in a...
We can't. And we have to educate them within the regular school day.
I got 1 minute hard, my producer's telling me. Now, did you have night school for these students, and was there a problem when you did for these adult students?
Yes, we did have a night school, and we were told by a children's advocacy group that we were not giving equal education to these students, so we had to shut down the night school and put everybody into the regular daytime classes.
They complained, essentially, that the regular, air quotes, regular kids didn't get as much specific attention as these other people, so they had to put them back in the class in order to attempt to what is called mainstream them.
Adults are in with our kids from other countries who don't speak English. Do you know if they have criminal records? Do you know if they've been vaccinated? Do you know who these people are?
Listen.
No, they don't come in with any records of any sort, not even a birth certificate. So we have to accept their word for their age when they enter school.
We have to accept their word. Let that sink in.
Are the parents allowed to know who they are?
The other parents, I suppose, if they entered the school and looked around, they would see some people that looked like they were a little older than high school age.
And they go into the same bathrooms as our kids?
Why, yes, they do.
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah. Yes, they do.
All right,
they are
10
high
seconds.
school students.
Sheriff Bunny Welsh and Judith Kennedy, Mayor, thank you. I'm sorry. We're doing this next week. You're both coming back. This is infuriating. Street justice is next.
This is the situation, folks, in which your children are existing. Whether you like it or not, whether they like it or not, the educators couldn't give a shit less about you.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Breaking news. According to the latest report coming out of SHR Media, a merchandise store to support both the Reaver of Common Sense and SHR Media has just been unleashed to the general public. Be forewarned that this site can be contagious and numerous items can be purchased to support the best news programming. Go to Reaver.one website and click on the store link to check out the merchandise.
Hello, I'm Matt, a student at Hillsdale College. Here's Hillsdale President Larry Arnn on the continuing relevance of the Constitution.
Many argue today that the Constitution is outdated because it addresses problems peculiar to the 18th century. Some parts of the Constitution do read rather quaintly. Consider the injunction against titles of nobility in Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. But is that so outdated? The purpose of the injunction is to prevent the government granting special privileges to some for partisan reasons. This strikes at the heart of the rule of law. The crony capitalism so common today is a place where the government bestows favors and tax dollars on some businesses to give them a leg up over others. This is exactly the kind of thing the Constitution was meant to prohibit. The Constitution is not so outdated after all.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.com.
Names are dark. The people misled by corrupt politicians, lied to by establishment media, and deceived by the false messages of Islam. A nation in confusion needs a guide. It needs a man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker, SHR Media, High Plains Talk Radio, Live Rebooting Liberty, and YouTube for a unique brand of commentary on the unpleasant blind guide. Because truth is not always pleasant.
In a world controlled by corrupt politicians.
You got a business. You didn't build that.
A team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Sean.
Dude, I'm not saying half of the stupid problem.
Sackhead Clint.
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Sako as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, cause I'm drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on SHRmedia.com.
Beware, the Jersey Takeover is here. Every Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can catch the Reaver of Common Sense show, hosted by Jersey Joe, right here on SHRmedia.com and HighPlainsDailyNews.com. Only Jersey can deliver hell like no one else, so consider this your fair warning.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
In a world where insanity reigns supreme and safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, it's comforting to know an ancient, fat, long-haired, bearded reprobate has your mind in mind. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California. And despite every attempt by the SHR Media Network to revoke his shameless contract, we return to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, you are listening to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon, live and direct, here on the SHR Media Network. I'm going to let a cat out of the bag right now. Unfortunately, it would appear that for tomorrow night's Sackheads radio show, one of the heads will be missing. You have to ask yourself immediately, was it Sackheads BZ? No, I will be there. All right, is it Sackheads Clint? No, Clint will be there. Who's left? Oh, Sackheads Sean is not going to be here tomorrow. He's practicing. But you know what? I'll let Clint get into that. But first, we have to prove once again, as we already know, Nancy Pelosi is in fact insane, suffering from leftist dementia, and she actually admits for once, that the Democrats don't have poop on Donald Trump and Russia.
You think that the Russians have something on President Trump.
Yes.
You say, what do they have on him?
Right.
You're asking the question, do you actually have information to back up that question, or are you just speculating without evidence?
No, I just wonder what the Russians have politically, personally, or financially on President Trump, because this is about a national security issue. Why would the President of the United States just come in and start to flirt with the idea of lifting sanctions on Russia in terms of their behavior in Eastern Europe? Why would the President of the United States question the START Treaty? Why would the question of the United States put Putin on the pedestal and diminish the greatness of America in that? There's something wrong with this picture.
You're asking these questions, but you don't have underlying facts that suggest...
Well, there's nothing I would suggest here, but yes. I would say this. Let's have the outside independent committee.
She has got nothing. It's a big, messy nothing burger. Nothing. Zip. Zero. The null set. You don't have a thing. Not a thing. Now, we're going to go into this this topic. This might be a little bit extended, and I'm going to go through the whole thing comprehensively from beginning to end because I want everyone to understand how it occurred, when it occurred, why it occurred. I could submit that you're not going to read this, you're not going to hear this on other news shows, other radio shows. I've done my level best to assemble as much as humanly possible and then attempt to explain it in as chronological a way as possible with regard to Trump surveillance and the Democrats. And it starts here. It starts with the House Intelligence Committee chairman, Devin Nunes, when he created that firestorm when he released information earlier last week, which tended to confirm that members of Donald Trump's team had been surveilled and names unmasked for political purposes. I can think of no other reason for doing that than political purposes. I've already written 2 lengthy posts about that, and so sort of sotto voce, I'd care to point this out. Is the same Devin? It was the same Devin Nunes who, in May of 2013, revealed, and this is interesting. I had to dig this up, but Devin Nunes made a very important revelation in May of 2013, and I actually wrote about it. I'm kibitzing my own material, and it's this: Congressman Devin Nunes, the DOJ tapped phones in the House gallery. Fornicalia Congressman Devin Nunes of the 22nd District spoke on the Hugh Hewitt Show Wednesday afternoon and revealed a bombshell. Not only did the DOJ tap the phones of reporters, if you remember that, but Nunes indicated the DOJ tapped the telephones of the House of Representatives in the gallery area, where not only reporters used the phones, but various D.C. politicians. Now, with that as sort of a foundational political bed, so you have an idea of what Congressman Nunes is about, let's go back to the original revelation by Chairman Nunes on, let's see, I think this was March 22nd, if I'm not mistaken.
So first, I recently confirmed that on numerous occasions, the intelligence community incidentally collected information about U.S. citizens involved in the Trump transition. Details about U.S. persons associated with the incoming administration, details with little or no apparent foreign intelligence value, were widely disseminated in intelligence community reporting. Third, I have confirmed that additional names of Trump transition team members were unmasked. And fourth and finally, I want to be clear, none of this surveillance was related to Russia or the investigation of Russian activities or of the Trump team. The House Intelligence Committee will thoroughly investigate surveillance and its subsequent dissemination to determine a few things here that I want to read off. Who was aware of it, why it was not disclosed to Congress, who requested and authorized the additional unmasking, whether anyone directed the intelligence community to focus on Trump associates, and whether any laws, regulations, or procedures were violated.
So this led to various products by Crane and Summit being, pounded out of Democrat and American media maggot sphincters nationally, initially bent because Chairman Nunes dared to do his job and notified President Trump of his findings before the rest of the House committee. Actually, what Chairman Nunes did is he spoke to reporters first. He got the reporters, the American media maggots, in on the situation before he informed President Trump, before he went back and informed the highest-ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee, Adam Schiff, who threw said camshaft. So, of course, this didn't sit well with Adam Schiff and little Chucky Schumer and Nancy Pelosi et al. And that's where you heard that Nancy Pelosi said that Nunes needs to leave. Chucky Schumer said Nunes needs to leave and step down, and Speaker Paul Ryan needs to kick him out. But here's Okay, simultaneously, somebody actually began to pay attention, though, to a broadcast made on MSNBC's Morning Joe about a month ago, which included a revelation so large that it was literally hiding in plain sight for some time. So let's listen to Evelyn Farkas, a former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense in the Obama administration, out that administration regarding the Trump campaign.
And then Evelyn Farkas, the other big story of the day. You actually knew about this attempt to get and preserve information, and full transparency, we're doing some work yourself. Tell us about that.
Well, I was urging my former colleagues and frankly speaking, the people on the Hill. It was more actually aimed at telling the Hill people, get as much information as you can, get as much intelligence as you can before President Obama leaves the administration.
Get as much intelligence as you can before the Obama leaves the administration.
Because I had a fear that somehow that information would disappear.
The information would disappear.
Here with the senior people who left. So it would be hidden away in the bureaucracy, that the Trump folks, if they found out how we knew what we knew about the Trump staff's dealing with Russians.
About the Trump staff dealing with Russians.
That they would try to compromise those sources and methods, meaning we would no longer have access to that intelligence. So I became very worried because not enough was coming out into the open, and I knew that there was more.
So it was time to spill, wasn't it, Evelyn? Wasn't it, Evelyn?
We have very good intelligence on Russia. So then I had talked to some of my former colleagues, and I knew that they were trying to also help get information to the Hill.
A lot going on today.
Yeah.
Mark,
that's why you have the leaking.
Exactly.
That's why you have the leaking. Bingo. Hello. Ding, ding, ding. Yahtzee. That's why you have the leaking. Continue.
All right. Put it in 10 seconds, Mark Halpern, all the news of the day.
Okay, so there you go. She spilled that information about a month ago. So what she said was essentially this. The Obama administration ensured the leakage occurred and then tried to hide both the source of the leak as well as how the information was being shipped to the Hill, otherwise known as the American media maggots. Now, there's only one purpose for this. Tell me, write in chat if you can think of another. Send me an email if you can think of another reason for this other than politics. The obvious intent was to damage the Trump campaign as much as possible and then undermine, minimize, and block the president-elect's ability, because he was president-elect then. Remember, he was just a regular civilian, as were all the other members of his staff. To block, to undermine he and his staff's ability to conduct the business necessary to assemble his team and try to move forward. I can think of no other words than this. This is, what is it if not a conspiracy? LifeSet magazine writes, this is the headline, former FBI assistant director says Farkas exposed conspiracy cabal on Trump surveillance. Law enforcement experts say Obama officially must testify on unmasking, and he may have committed a crime. The discussion with MSNBC host Mika Brzezinski on March 2nd focused on a New York Times story that appeared the day before under the headline Obama administration rushed to preserve intelligence of Russian hacking. The story quoted unnamed former government officials who described efforts to leave a clear trail of intelligence for government investigators. The information included evidence passed along by U.S. allies of meetings between Russian officials and Trump's associates, and communications intercepted by American intelligence agencies among Russians discussing contacts with Trump officials. You know, like I've said, the spice must flow and evidence must be preserved. So why? It was more actually aimed at telling the Capitol Hill people, get as much information as you can and get as much intelligence as you can before President Obama leaves the administration, because I had a fear that somehow that information would disappear with the senior people who left, she said, Farkas. So it would be hidden away in the bureaucracy. So, you know, I played the cut. I read that for you. The Trump folks if they found out how we knew what we knew about the staff, the Trump staff's dealing with Russians, they would try to compromise these sources and methods, meaning we would no longer have access to that intelligence, she said. So I became very, very worried because not enough was coming out in the open. How do you get things out in the open? I know. Open a spigot and things leak. And I knew that there was more. She added, that's why you have the leaking. People are worried. All right. So she knows there's a leak. She knows the reason for the leak, the means of the leak, and its justification in their minds. Justified. Which kind of led to this little tete-a-tete between Sean Spicer and a little journalista.
Yeah. My understanding is that Dr. Farkas left the administration in 2015. Why is what she said in 2017 relevant to something that allegedly happened in 2016?
The question I would have for you is exactly, why is it? What is she says in her things, I'm urging my colleagues, I'm urging it to get the Hill, but it's odd that the presumption seems to be, why is it interesting? Have you asked her?
No, you're the one telling us to...
So,
thank you, Sean Spicer. Have you done your fucking job? No.
But she's been on television talking about what she's done, and you seem to have made no...
I don't believe everything I see on TV.
Well, neither do I, but I also I would assume that as a reporter that actually is interested in this story, a senior Obama administration official that handled Russia, all Obama administration officials generally are. Thank you. I appreciate the timeline, but I'm well aware of when it was. But my point is you seem to be rushing to her defense. At some point, she went on television and talked about actions that she and her colleagues took to spread classified information. And instead of defending her, it might be worth asking her what she's talking about, who she spread it to, why she did it, was it appropriate, who cleared her to do it. Maybe those are questions that can ask instead of asking me to defend why a former Obama administration official is revealing stuff that should be extremely concerning.
That's the point. Thank you, Sean Spicer. Why is Evelyn Farkas on MSNBC saying anything at all?
So I'm going to go back to Tamara.
One other question, which is, are you more concerned about that or Russian interference in the presidential election?
Russia, interference, election, Russia, election, interference, Russia. None of it proven, no evidence, period, end of state. American media maggots won't let it go. Russia, Trump, election, Russia, Trump. That's all they can think about. The rest of it can go to hell as far as they're concerned.
Well, I think that if I'm, as an American citizen, I'm very concerned about the fact that people potentially were sharing information about other Americans for political purposes and using classified information to do so and leaking it. That should be concerning to everybody.
It should. That is essentially, in a sentence, what all of this is about and why it's, to me, extremely concerning. If my government, and it is my government still, like it or not, if my government can do that to someone highly placed and try to rip them asunder because the current regime disagrees with an incoming regime, and that incoming regime, they're not sworn in, they're not government members, they're not government officials, they're civilians. Like me, like you. And if a government can tear or attempt to tear an incoming administration apart, what the hell do you think it can do to you and me?
I mean,
Russian interference.
No, that's not what I said. Please stop trying to. It's not. No.
It's just which is worse.
No, and I guess I don't. I mean, the answer is I think if someone's interfering with our election, that's not good. I don't think that someone revealing and leaking classified information is good either. I'm not sure that you should have to choose. I think that you can have outrage and concern for both, and I don't think we should have to pick as an American whether or not which freedom we want to have undermined. I think we should expect both of them, and so the idea that we should have to choose whether or not we want someone to interfere with our election or protect our civil liberties isn't one that we should want or that we should have questioned. Alexis.
And that's the point. Thank you, Sean Spicer. Thank you very much. Of course, what is this? This is nothing more than just fetid navel-gazing. on the part of the Republicans, right? The people subject to unmasking were no more plain civilians than Jell-O as a food group, right? This has nothing to do with privacy, right? Joseph D. Genova, who served as U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia under Ronald Reagan, said Farkas and the former administration officials she referred to should be questioned under oath. Ms. Farkas made a major blunder and, in fact, probably confessed to a crime or knowledge of people who committed the crime, he said. It was a remarkable interview and amazing it went unnoticed at the time. Well, we can only hope, but we know that with all the Benghazi hearings that we had conducted under Trey Gowdy, no one was fired and no one breathes air behind bars today. But here are the questions that, as per normal, no one, and I mean no one, in the American media maggot's queue is asking. James Kallstrom, you may remember him. A former assistant director of the FBI told LifeSet it is troubling that Farkas even knew about the intelligence reports that she urged officials to spread to congressional staffers. Listen to his question. How does somebody who's not even in the administration anymore, who's in civilian life, have access to this information? He asked. What kind of a conspiracy cabal is this? This is a former assistant director of the FBI asking the question. Well, what indeed? I found this particular story from a magazine, a website that I have never heard before, but is incredibly detailed. I got this from circa.com. Headline: Obama's rule changes open door for NSA intercepts of Americans to reach political hands. Please follow me on this, because at the end of the story, I'm going to tie it all up. As his presidency drew to a close, Barack Obama's top aides routinely received and reviewed intelligence reports gleaned from the National Security Agency's incidental intercepts of Americans abroad, taking advantage of rules their boss relaxed starting in 2011. Remember that date. To help the government better fight terrorism, espionage by foreign enemies, and hacking threats, Circa has learned dozens of times. In 2016, those intelligence reports identified Americans who were directly intercepted talking to foreign sources or were the subject of conversations between two or more monitored foreign figures. Sometimes the Americans' names were officially unmasked. Other times they were so specifically described in the reports that their identities were readily discernible. Among those cleared to request and consume unmasked NSA-based intelligence reports about U.S. citizens were Obama's National Security Advisor Susan Rice, his CIA Director John Brennan, and then Attorney General Loretta Lynch. I hope you read that quite clearly. I hope you heard that quite clearly. Okay, who could unmask American names? John Brennan, CIA. Loretta Lynch, AG. Susan Rice, National Security Advisor. Remember that.
Welcome back to Hannity. So, as we told you in the last two segments, according to Sarah Carter and John Solomon's reporting, Susan Rice, John Brennan, and Loretta Lynch were cleared to, quote, request and consume unmasked intelligence reports. So, will the mainstream media cover that bombshell? Here with reaction from Judicial Watch, Tom Fitton, and from the American Center for Law and Justice, Jay Sekulow. Jay.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Have you ever heard of the American Center for Law and Justice? Have you ever heard of Jay Sekulow? Go to aclj.org. It is a great, great website with lots of insight. They sue on behalf of you, the American taxpayer. And Jay Sekulow is an attorney and an incredibly intelligent individual.
Break this down legally from us from the issue of surveillance,
right?
Unmasking, leaking intelligence based on, she's not even in the administration anymore.
No, at the time that she said that she was aware of the information, the intelligence, she was no longer an employee of the State Department. So what you have to ask is, the first question a lawyer asks is...
Well, she was actually the former assistant defense secretary.
Defense secretary. So the first question you have to ask, how did a former defense secretary find out about this information when she was gone? So that brings up felony number one. Who leaked her that information?
Right. As the reporter said, in front of Sean Spicer. How did she get that? Why was she in there? Why is that important? Why is it important? Because she's not in the damn administration.
That's number one. Number two, we were concerned that the Obama administration officials involved in this would be known by the Trump administration. Well, guess what? The president of the United States is Donald Trump, so of course he would know that. So then it brings up the third issue. And the third issue is here, what in the world did they think that they had that they could justify doing this? And Sean, I said on your program weeks ago, Loretta Lynch, John Brennan, these were the ones to be looking at. Look who signed off on these orders. Look who wanted this unmasking. So you've got the whole issue of unlawful unmaskings, leaked information, by the way, then to a third party who was no longer a government official.
By the way, it was more than that. According to one report, she was an advisor to Hillary Clinton at the time.
Well, that would even make it worse. But, at that point, you're...
Did you hear any of the American media maggots spill that information? She, at the time, was an advisor to Hillary Rodham Clinton, and yet she is in possession of information, having left the administration, that she should not fucking have.
Pouring felony on top of felony, because...
Do you think this woman, based on what she said on that show, is in legal jeopardy? Or
I would tell her to hire a lawyer. Don't call me, but she needs to hire a lawyer. Immediately, because first of all, she's going on television talking about how she got information. They were trying to hide it from the incoming administration.
Yeah.
So the FBI needs to, or the Department of Justice should impanel this grand jury tonight.
When she talks about, getting this information to colleagues on the Hill, is she talking about leaking?
Well, what colleagues on the Hill?
Right.
She is now in private life. What does a colleague on the Hill mean? Friends of hers that are on the other party?
How could she not know what she was saying here?
That's what's so, Sean, what's so bizarre about all of this is
because leftists think and know that they are smarter than you.
Know that the Loretta Lynch, they knew better than all of this, but they did it anyways. They thought they'd get away with it impunity.
Tom?
They also thought the other nominee was going to be president.
What's your take, Tom, legally?
Well, as Jay, I'm not a lawyer, but I've been doing this scandal work for 20 years almost, and I know the hallmarks of a scandal. You've got administration officials working improperly with outside former officials to launder information that they're not allowed to send out and around.
Now, it's interesting. Thank you, White Mama in chat, for putting that link up right now. The link is from circa.com in case you're interested in looking for it. It says, Susan, the headline should be, if you're looking for it in circa.com, Susan Rice insists unmasking claims are absolutely false. Well, guess what? I'm going to play a clip of Susan Rice, and then I'll let you be the judge of that.
This reminds me of the FBI Filegate scandal under Clinton, where they were looking at raw data from FBI files in the White House, or at least had access to it. Here they were accessing raw intelligence data that was arguably protected by the Privacy Act and other laws if you require criminal sanctions in theory. And then they're also working with Congress on this. So here you've got the elements of the scandal and where the investigations need to go. Not only a criminal investigation, but getting back to the so-called congressional investigation, whether by the intelligence committees or select committee, this is what they need to look at. Who the Obama administration was working with on the outside and on the inside to improperly disseminate this classified material.
Let's go back to the legal. Again, surveillance. There's legitimate surveillance.
Sure.
But you're not supposed to unmask an American that gets picked up.
All right, let's stop right there. I am not going to half this. I'm not going to half-ass this because, to me, it is extremely, extremely important. We're going to go to a break, cut to that, and we're going to be right back. I am not going to not play the rest of this video and the rest of the videos that I have for you and the sound bites because they are all incredibly important. Trust me, you're going to have a little trust in old BZ. I will wrap it up so that even a Democrat can understand what's going on.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, it's Sean from the Sackheads Radio Show, also one of the owners here at the SHR Media Network. Are you opinionated? Have you ever wanted to do your own show? Have you ever heard somebody like the Sackheads and go, yeah, I could probably do that better? Well, now's your chance. Send me a 5-minute clip at sackheadsradio@gmail.com, and maybe you can be part of the SHR broadcasting team. sackheadsradio@gmail.com.
Times are dark. The people are misled by corrupt politicians, lied to by establishment media, and deceived by the false messages of Islam. A nation looking for direction needs a guide. It needs a man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker, SHR Media, Pundit Press Radio, and YouTube through the SHR Media page for a different kind of commentary on the unpleasant blind guy. Because the truth is not always pleasant.
In a world controlled by corrupt politicians,
You got a business. You didn't build that.
a team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Sean.
Dude, I'm not saying cow for the stupid drunk.
Sackhead Clint.
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Saku as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, 'cause I'm drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on SHRmedia.com.
The bloviating Zeppelin. He's big-footed enough radio shows to last a lifetime, courtesy of Sean, Clint, Ken, and Jersey Joe. Now it's time for him to waddle on his own 2 feet via the glorious SHR Media. Gird thy loins for the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon, coming soon to ossicles near you. Excelsior.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
In a world where insanity reigns supreme and safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, it's comforting to know an ancient, fat, long-haired, bearded reprobate has your mind in mind. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California. And despite every attempt by the SHR Media Network to revoke his shameless contract, we return to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, thank you for listening to me on the Berserk Bobcat Saloon. It's Tuesday. It's April 4th, the year of our Lord, 2017, and we were talking Sean Hannity was talking with Tom Fitton, Jay Sekulow from the ACLJ, and they were making various salient and important observations with regard to Evelyn Farkas, why she did what she did, and what could happen to her for doing so.
If you get unmasked improperly, it could be a felony. It could be also civil action.
But she admits here.
No, she's bragging about it.
Yeah, she said if they found out how we knew, what we knew about the Trump staff.
Right.
So they had to be unmasked to know.
Of course that. So how did this level of person outside of government end up with unmasked intelligence on the President of the United States or his team? How in the world how did Loretta Lynch, who's, by the way, doesn't mind meeting on an airplane with President Clinton, how does she justify having this out there? How did she justify the sign-off? And then how did this individual, this Ms. Farkas, get this information?
And when she talks about...
And then our friends on the Hill, what are they
friends
talking
on the
about
Hill
here?
urging colleagues...
No, Sean,
does that sound like she's talking about leaking the information?
Well, yeah, she wanted to make sure it was there so that the Trump administration didn't destroy it or something.
That's exactly what she said. She wanted to make sure that the information got out into the public. Leaking information. Saying in plain view, in front of everyone, and from the lips of an individual who should have no access to any of this whatsoever.
Some statement like that. Here's the concern. The concern is the intelligence apparatus in the United States has rules that they have to follow like every other agency. And it appears that in the waning days, or maybe the last year of the former administration, they viewed those laws as advisory opinions,
in
not
other
law.
words, our intelligence, at least at some level, was politicized.
Completely.
And people's names were amassed, and it was shared?
Yes, and I go back to James Comey, who just days ago goes on air, in a hearing in Congress and says we're investigating Trump associates and Russia, but well, of course he never wants to disclose an investigation, then asked if in fact he was investigating, after he was investigating the leaks of classified information, what his real response is, what he actually said was not he wasn't doing an investigation, he said, I'm not willing to say that because I'm not willing to say they were classified. Now, everybody at this point knows it's classified information, but that's how they're playing it, that close. And what the Republicans need to do is ask the next question. For instance, when the president tweeted out, in quotes, wiretap, which we all know is surveillance,
right.
Why didn't anybody at that hearing say, well, let's put the wiretap portion of it, which hardly anybody uses wiretap. Was he surveilled? They wouldn't have answered the question.
Well, the leadership of the FBI is the leadership of the FBI is a real problem. Comey refused to deal with adequately the mishandling classified information by Hillary Clinton, and then now by the Obama administration, he doesn't want to look at that. He's as political an FBI director as anyone we've had.
James Comey is as political, if not more so, than any director. Even the one that I worked under, who was a political hack, James Comey, because of today's current technology, has more information, more corruptive information, more silencing information at his fingertips than any other director, including J. Edgar Hoover, at any other time in the history of America. He has proven to be a political animal time and again.
How big is this on a scale of 1 to 10?
Oh, I think this is gigantic. Remember, you were talking about Watergate. Watergate was the cover-up. That was the problem. Here, the act itself could be the problem. And that's the actual...
maybe a cover-up on top.
On top of that. So you could have one on top of another.
It's going to get interesting, and I think the media will end up with egg on their face as usual. They're always wrong.
Today, the power to unmask an American name inside an NSA intercept, once considered a rare event in the intelligence and civil liberty communities, now resides with about 20 different officials inside the NSA alone. The FBI, I should like to point out, also has the ability to unmask Americans' names to other intelligence professionals and policymakers. Amazing. Stop. That power exists within, to my estimation, roughly all, and I believe at many points someone has said, yes, all 17 alphabet agencies in the American intelligence community. Okay, so I haven't done this yet, and it made me wonder. I knew most of them, but I didn't know all of them. Everybody keeps referring to this. 17 members of the intelligence community. All 17 members of the intelligence community. The intelligence community consists of 17 members. Okay, who are they? In order, they are this. And you're going to be shocked. You're going to think to yourself, this is a member of the American intelligence community? Listen. Number 1, Office of the Director of National Intelligence. Number 2, Central Intelligence Agency. 3, National Security Agency. 4, Defense Intelligence Agency. Did you know we had a DIA? 5, Federal Bureau of Investigation. 6, Department of State, Bureau of Intelligence and Research. 7, Department of Homeland Security, Office of Intelligence and Analysis. 8, Drug Enforcement Administration, Office of National Security Intelligence. 9, Department of the Treasury. Department of the Treasury, Office of Intelligence and Analysis. 10, Department of Energy. Department of Energy, Office of Intelligence and Counterintelligence. 11, National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. 12, National Reconnaissance Office, the NRO. 13, Air Force Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance. 14, Army Military Intelligence. 15, Office of Naval Intelligence, ONI. 16, Marine Corps Intelligence. 17, Coast Guard Intelligence. Wait. Blah, 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 Air Force, Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Coast Guard. Wait a minute. Number 4, they had a Defense Intelligence Agency. Why do they need all the rest of them? Power. Control. You know, of those 17, here's what's missing. The only thing that's missing is your local dental board's intelligence unit, okay? You, sir, put down the amalgam. Keep that one under your hat, all right? Because pretty soon there could be a dental board intelligence agency. The ACLU, an ally of Obama on many issues, issued a statement a few months ago warning that the president's loosened procedures governing who could request or see unmasked American intercepts by the NSA were grossly inadequate and lacked appropriate safeguards. So I'm going to ask you, put on your thinking caps just for a moment and ask yourself, why why would Obama do this? And why only 2 weeks from the end of his second term? You should also ask yourself, has he done this before? We'll get back to that. Nunes, as well as Trump supporters, will be trying to determine if that access was warranted or a backdoor form of political espionage by an outgoing administration trying to monitor its successor on the world stage. Any proof of Obama aides were using NSA-enriched intelligence reports to monitor his transition on the world stage could embolden the new president. But perhaps the most consequential outcome of the new revelations is that it may impact the NSA's primary authority to intercept foreigners. Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, FISA, is up for renewal, that's Freudian, at the end of the year. But wait, a touchy subject for the intelligence community, you see, because who holds the purse strings? Congress. The Spreaker article then nails it with this, in my opinion, highly revelatory paragraph. For years, the NSA has been required to follow strict rules to protect the accidental intercepts of Americans from being consumed and misused by other governmental agencies. The rules required a process known as minimization, where the identity and information about an American who was intercepted is redacted or masked with generic references like American number one. The number of senior government officials who could approve unmasking has been limited to just a few, like the NSA director himself. Wait, this conflicts with what we know now. In his final days in office, Obama created the largest ever expansion of access to non-minimized NSA intercepts, creating a path for all U.S. intelligence to gain access to unmasked reports by changes encoded in a Reagan-era Executive Order 12333. The government officials who could request or approve an exception to unmask a U.S. citizen's identity has grown substantially. The NSA now has 20 executives who can approve the unmasking of American information inside intercepts, and the FBI has similar numbers. And executives in 16 agencies, not just the FBI, CIA, and NSA, have the right to request unmasked information. So thank you, ever so kindly, Barack Hussein Obama. That was a stellar decision. Smashing. Brilliant. Spreaker continues. This raises serious concerns that agencies that have responsibilities such as prosecuting domestic crimes, regulating our financial policy, and enforcing our immigration laws will now have access to a wealth of personal information that could be misused. Congress needs to take action to regulate and provide oversight over these activities. ACLU Legislative Counsel Nima Singh Giuliani warned in January. Even when an American's name isn't included in a report, the NSA's intercept information could be so specific that it in fact identifies him or her. You know, I think that being the smart people that you are, highly intelligent, because that's why you're listening to me, I think you're beginning to see the problems and the reasons. CNN exists, excuse me, it doesn't, it does exist, but CNN insists, however, that Farkas revealed nothing and the GOP has nothing.
A former Defense Department employee from the Obama administration, now taking heat for saying this earlier this month on MSNBC.
That the Trump folks, if they found out how we knew what we knew about the Trump staff.
I'm just gobsmacked by what she said. Listen to her.
Dealing with Russians, that they would try to compromise those sources and methods, meaning we would no longer have access to that intelligence.
Her name is Evelyn Farkas, and she served as Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Russia, Ukraine, and Eurasia until 2015. Something else she said now has conservative media blaming her for leaking classified intelligence.
Well, that's a shock, since that's just what she essentially said. Oh, to think the conservative media made the obvious conclusion because of that.
Here's what she said about wanting to inform lawmakers on Capitol Hill.
So I became very worried because not enough was coming out into the open, and I knew that there was more. We have very good intelligence on Russia. So then I had talked to some of my former colleagues, and I knew that they were trying to also help get information to the Hill.
Even though she says her comments were based on media reports, those on the right suggest that Farkas basically admitted she was responsible for leaking information that the Obama administration had collected on then-President-elect Donald Trump. Conservative media has run with it, suggesting her comments prove there was surveillance on Trump.
Well, I guess you don't believe it if you don't believe in the English language. If you somehow just don't quite grok the concept of basic English.
Farkas is referring to surveilled information on the Trump transition team. Listen next as she admits that there was unmasking, in other words, revealing the identities of those Trump team members.
Early this morning, Farkas defended her original remarks.
Yeah, this is called her backtracking her ass up.
We're having now a transition of power from the Obama administration to the Trump administration. And if indeed there was an investigation ongoing, if indeed there was information that the Obama administration had about Russian interference and possible American involvement, I wanted to make sure that Congress knew about it. I do not, absolutely do not condone leaking. It's against the law.
There you go. It's against the law. Why didn't you consider that when you first made your statement to MSNBC? Okay, then, like I said, Farkas decides that she's going to take back her words because she may have revealed too much and let too much of the entire cat out of the bag itself. I apologize for the quality of the video, but I'm going to have to crank it up just a little bit so that you can get the full take of it. Guess who's responsible for all of this? And guess what it all becomes in her estimation? That's right, fake news.
I'm just asking questions based on her own words. Here's where it gets interesting. Today, during another interview on MSNBC, Farkas said she's now the victim of fake news because we play her entire comment in context. I'm not kidding. Watch this.
And on the dark campaign of fake news, that's still ongoing. We see even someone like myself get swept up in all of this. Right. When people like me are speaking on behalf of process, people spin it to suit.
Why are you speaking at all?
Their needs. And I think it may be that the Russians are behind even such fake news today.
It may be. No evidence. But it's time to start the rumor. Because that's all Democrats and the American media maggots have.
Maybe the Russians put these words in my mouth asking about surveillance, unmasking, and leaking intelligence. I'm simply asking questions based on what she said. As other members of the mainstream media, by the way, continue to ignore the facts in this case. The media doesn't want to focus on this today. Oh, no, they want to focus on the New York Times headline that came out late this afternoon. 2 White House officials helped give Nunes intelligence reports. Now, the headline is deceptive, obscure, and I would argue purposely dishonest. If you read further into the report, it isn't really a story. It just says the official, quote, played a role. Now, tonight I'm calling on the intel community, stop being distracted by the hate Trump media, destroy Trump media. The Attorney General, General Sessions, needs to convene a grand jury. And the only thing we know for sure is that the intel was leaked about retired Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. That is a felony. That is a crime.
This is the American media maggots saying, I think it's from the movie from the dog, Up in the Air, something like that. Douglas. That was Douglas the dog. It's the American media maggots equivalent of Douglas the dog. Squirrel.
And as for Dr. Farkas, well, we need to know what she knew about the unmasking, about the surveillance, and when she knew it, and who she was communicating with, and who was giving her the information. And what did she know also about leaking or getting the information to.
That's right. Those are all excellent questions. Oddly enough, questions that are not being asked by the American media maggots. Are you shocked? You are not. I frequently have to remind myself that this is, in fact, the planet Earth and not what I typify as the planet Zephron. who, as far as I'm concerned, is responsible for most of the ills in the universe. Ask anyone from Zephron. But it's interesting to note that Fred Fleitz, who's a former CIA officer, said, this is again from the Circa article, oh yes, White Mamba said in chat, this Russian excuse is getting tired and old. Yes, just a little bit ancient. He also questioned why so many in Washington regarded as established fact the conclusion of U.S. security agencies that Russia meddled in the election in order to help Trump and hurt Democratic nominee Hillary Clinton. He says he does not think Russia believed Trump could win. No one believed Trump could win. Fleitz pointed to reports that Russian agents tried to hack into the computer systems of both major parties. Here's the difference. They succeeded only with the Democrats. Maybe all they did was exploit the fact that the Democrats left the barn door open, he said. Fleitz said the Obama administration did little to counter cyber threats, not just from Russia, but from China as well. Then, finally, there is this, what I consider to be pivotal information. Fox News headline, Trump surveilled before nomination. Agencies with info blocked Nunes for weeks. A Friday-breaking Fox News report on surveillance of President Trump's team that began before he became Republican presidential nominee claimed a very senior intelligence official was responsible, as well as for the unmasking of the names of private U.S. citizens. The report cited sources which also indicated that House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes knew of the existence of the information in January, but one or more intelligence agencies blocked him, and there were only 2 locations where he could view the information that he called very troubling. On Thursday, the New York Times began reporting what they claimed were the identities of 2 White House officials who were the sources of the information disclosed to Nunes. Nunes met with sources on White House grounds. By the way, White House grounds, that's 18 acres for people that are unaware of that. Nunes met with sources on White House grounds on the day before he announced to reporters striking news that he had seen new and disturbing information indicating intelligence officials under the Obama administration unmasked the names of Trump team members who were incidentally surveilled. Okay, now we're getting to the crux of the biscuit. Who might this very senior intelligence official be? In my opinion, Mike Cernovich found this out and revealed it first. Susan Rice requested unmasking of incoming Trump administration officials. Susan Rice, who served as the National Security Advisor under President Obama, has been identified as the official who requested an unmasking of incoming Trump officials. Mike SHR Media can exclusively report. The White House counsel's office identified Rice as the person responsible for the unmasking after examining Rice's document log requests. The reports Rice requested to see are kept under tightly controlled conditions. Each person must log her name before being granted access to them. Upon learning of Rice's actions, H.R. McMaster dispatched his close aide Derek Harvey to Capitol Hill to brief Chairman Nunes. This reporter, meaning Mike Cernovich, has been informed that Maggie Haberman has had this story about Susan Rice for at least 48 hours and has chosen to sit on it in an effort to protect the reputation of former President Barack Obama. Let's repeat that again. This reporter, who is Mike Cernovich, has been informed that Maggie Haberman has had this story about Susan Rice for at least 48 hours and has chosen purposely to sit on it in an effort to protect the reputation of former President Barack Obama. Okay, who's Maggie Haberman? Well, she's a political correspondent for the New York Times. Are you gobsmacked? Wait, I told you in chat that I'm going to tell you something interesting about Susan Rice. To whom is Susan Rice married? That would be ABC executive producer Ian Cameron since 1992. He left ABC in 2010. he has access to the same information that she has. He, of course, kept his links to news and newsrooms. That doesn't get out of his blood. She was Obama's U.S. ambassador to the UN and finally his national security advisor. You have to remember, she's also the one who carried Obama's very heavy water when she went on most every Sunday show possible, imaginable, following the Benghazi attack, to claim that it occurred because of a video made in the United States of America, when in fact the truth was Hillary Clinton and others, as well as her daughter, Chelsea Clinton, had access to information that particular night of the Benghazi attack that no one else in the United States had, except a very select few, because her mother sent her a message indicating so. So Hillary Clinton and others knew and had information that was not the case at all. It wasn't a video, it was an attack. She knew, they knew, that very night. It wasn't the video, but Susan Rice went out the very next day and essentially lied to the Americans, all you lovely taxpayers, throughout the fruited plain. So in this upcoming audio I have here, Susan Rice speaks to MSNBC's Andrea Mitchell, and she both hedges and commits to nothing. If I'm not mistaken, I think this occurred actually earlier today or yesterday. I think today. From MSNBC.
And good day. I'm Andrea Mitchell in Washington, where the Trump White House is pouncing on a report accusing former Obama National Security Advisor Susan Rice of unmasking Americans whose communications were picked up through incidental collection by government intelligence agencies. The basic charge, political spying. Susan Rice joins me exclusively for her first public comments on these news stories.
Hi, Andrea. Good to be with you.
Good to see you. This is a firestorm. It is involved with the whole question of the Russia investigation, of the response by President Trump, and now these accusations against you. How do you reply? How do you respond?
Well, Andrea, this is not anything political has been alleged. The allegation is
nothing political has been alleged?
That somehow Obama administration officials utilized intelligence for political purposes. That's absolutely false. Let me explain how this works. I was a national security advisor. My job is to protect the American people and the security of our country. That's the same as the Secretary of State, the Secretary of Defense, the CIA director. And every morning, to enable us to do that, we receive from the intelligence community a compilation of intelligence reports that the IC, the intelligence community, has selected for us on a daily basis to give us the best information as to what's going on around the world.
That, by the way, is called the PDB, the President's Daily Brief. So she's actually telling the truth in that regard. The PDB is all the information, the intel information, what is called the take from the previous day and the previous night, and profit to the President of the United States and the various national security team that works for the President. She works for Barack Hussein Obama.
I received those reports, as did each of those other officials, and there were occasions when I would receive a report in which a U.S. person was referred to. Name not provided, just U.S. person.
Right. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a break, but trust me, we're going to come back to this because the lies have not yet really started. And again, I'm not going to half-ass this. We're going to listen to the complete thing so that you understand the convoluted affair that's going on and how deep this goes in the government of the United States. That's perhaps the most distressing of all. All of these people, most of them, and certainly the bulk of them under the prior administration, are working against your interests.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Breaking news. According to the latest report coming out of SHR Media, a merchandise store to support both the Reaver of Common Sense and SHR Media has just been unleashed to the general public. Be forewarned that this site can be contagious and numerous items can be purchased to support the best news programming. Go to Reaver.one website and click on the store link to check out the merchandise.
Hello, I'm Matt, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is Hillsdale President Larry Arnn on the continuing relevance of the Constitution.
Many argue today that the Constitution is outdated because it addresses problems peculiar to the 18th century. Some parts of the Constitution do read rather quaintly. Consider the injunction against titles of nobility in Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. But is that so outdated? The purpose of the injunction is to prevent the government granting special privileges to some for partisan reasons. This strikes at the heart of the rule of law. The crony capitalism so common today is a place where the government bestows favors and tax dollars on some businesses to give them a leg up over others. This is exactly the kind of thing the Constitution was meant to prohibit. The Constitution is not so outdated after all.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.com.
Times are dark. The people misled by corrupt politicians, lied to by establishment media, and deceived by the false messages of Islam. A nation in confusion needs a guide. It needs a man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker, SHR Media, High Plains Talk Radio, Live Rebooting Liberty, and YouTube for a unique brand of commentary on the unpleasant blind guide. Because truth is not always pleasant.
In a world controlled by corrupt politicians,
You got a business. You didn't build that.
a team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Sean.
Dude, I'm not saying Kafka, stupid bro.
Sackhead Clint.
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Sako as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, cause I'm drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on SHRmedia.com.
Beware, the Jersey Takeover is here. Every Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can catch the Reaver of Common Sense Show, hosted by Jersey Joe, right here on SHRmedia.com and HighPlainsDailyNews.com. Only Jersey can deliver hell like no one else, so consider this your fair warning.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome back to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon. Doing the job the American media maggots won't. Fundamentally changing America. One diaper at a time. Here is, courtesy of the SHR Media Network, the Bloviating Zeppelin.
Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, welcome back to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon. This is the last half hour of the show, and I don't believe at this point that I'm going to go into overtime. However, I should like to point out something that White Mamba in chat just released. He mentions that it's an interesting, quick article that tries to say calling Rice Typhoid Mary is sexist, and that is an excuse for Trump's camp to, you guessed it, distract from the real issue of Russian interference in the election. And he asks, is this a cult or what? And so, here's the link. It's thenation.com, and then you Google Susan Rice did her job, and boy, are Republicans pissed. So there's a link for you to go to. We're speaking now, we're listening to Susan Rice speak on MSNBC. And she continues.
And sometimes in that context, in order to understand the importance of the report and assess its significance, it was necessary to find out or request the information as to who that U.S. official was. Let me give you just a hypothetical example. This is completely made up, but let's say there was a conversation between two foreigners about a conversation they were having with an American who was proposing to sell to them high-tech bomb-making equipment. Now, if that came to me as National Security Advisor, it would matter enormously. Is this some kook sitting in his living room communicating via the internet offering to sell something he doesn't have? Or is this a serious person or company or entity with the ability to provide that technology, perhaps to an adversary?
This is a specious argument. This is a straw man argument. What she's saying is the essential reason for what it is that occurs, but it's not specific to this incident, to this situation. She's speaking with great generality as to how it should go, not how it went.
It would be an example of a case where knowing who the U.S. person was necessary to assess the information. So when that occurred, what I would do, or what any official would do, is to ask their briefer whether the intelligence community would go through its process, and there's a long-standing established process, to decide whether that information as to who the identity of the U.S. person was.
White Mamba is right. She says, in that context, it is significant. Let me give you a hypothetical. What does that have to do with anything?
Could be provided to me. So they'd take that question back, they'd put it through a process, and the intelligence community made the determination as to whether or not the identity of that American individual could be provided to me. That is what I and Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, CIA Director, DNI would do when we receive that information. We only do it to protect the American people, to do our jobs in the national security realm. That's the only reason.
Within that process and within the context of the Trump campaign, the Trump transition, did you seek the names of people involved in, to unmask the names of people involved in the Trump transition, the Trump campaign, people surrounding the president-elect?
Stop. That's exactly what they said before. Susan Rice just said, I was doing my job. So, of course, that's the mainstream line that they're going to hand out from thenation.com. Susan Rice did her job. Did they know that she did her job? No. She said it, therefore it must be true, right?
Let me be clear.
In order to spy on them, in order to expose them.
Absolutely not for any political purposes, to spy, expose, anything. But let me...
Absolutely not for political purposes. Uh-oh. Mary's going away. Take care, Mary. Have a good sleep.
Name of Mike Flynn.
I leaked nothing to nobody, and never have and never would. But
I leaked nothing to nobody. You may not have leaked anything to anyone, but what did they do with the information that you got? You unmasked it. You started this whole snowball rolling down the hill. You started it. No one else. And you're acknowledging essentially that you did.
Let me explain this. First of all, Andrea, to talk about the contents of a classified report, to talk about the individuals on the foreign side who were the targets of the report itself, or any Americans who may have been collected upon incidentally, is to disclose classified information. I'm not going to do that. And those people who are putting these stories out are doing just that. I can't describe any particular report I saw. And by the way, I have no idea what reports are allegedly are being described by those who are putting out this story. I don't know what time frame they were from. I don't know the subject matter. And I don't know who they think was collected upon.
Stop. That is the most naked, bald lie that I can think of imaginable. She unmasked the names. When you unmask the names, you look at the names. The names were of Donald Trump. The names were of Michael Flynn. When the names were unmasked, she knew exactly who they were. Precisely. It wasn't me. It wasn't you. And at the time, gosh, do you think that President-elect, or running for president, and also Michael Flynn and anyone else caught up in this crap, they were still civilians. So why were their names revealed? Why did she unmask them? She knew who they were. She said she didn't, but she does.
The allegation is that in one case they are alleging in the Daily Caller that there was a spreadsheet that you put out of all of these names.
Absolutely false.
And circulated.
No spreadsheet, nothing of the sort.
So where did they get that information? They just conjured it up out of their arse? A spreadsheet? Yes, of course. They must have. That's the only narrative that leftists have.
And let me also elaborate and say that when the intelligence community would respond to a request from a senior national security official for the identity of an American, that would come back only to the person who requested it. And it would be brought back to them directly.
To you directly?
To me or to whoever might have requested it on occasion. And this is, important. It was not then typically broadly disseminated throughout the national security community or the government. So the notion that, which some people are trying to suggest, that by asking for the identity of an American person, that is the same as leaking it, is completely false.
Now, she's correct there. There's a major difference between acquiring the information and releasing the information. However, she has clearly stated that she acquired the information and that it was unmasked. But she just lied to you when she said, well, I don't know who they are. If you unmasked it, you knew who the hell they were.
There's no equivalence between so-called unmasking and leaking. The effort to ask for the identity of an American citizen is necessary to understand the importance of an intelligence report in some instances.
Now, the House Chairman, Devin Nunes, said that the incidental collection of these names that he was briefed when he came to the White House in the complex of offices that you used to lead at the National Security Council, he said that it had nothing to do with the Russia investigation. Yet now the allegation is that you were responsible for leaking the fact that Mike Flynn had talked to Ambassador Kislyak and perhaps to others.
This is too good to not let go. This is why I like chat. This is why I invite anyone in podcast, anyone listening live, obviously listening live, not in podcast, come into chat. I love to have people in chat. I love to interact with people in chat. White Mama just wrote this. She spread it around like peanut butter throughout the ABC intelligence agencies. Now she's playing dumb. What a pile of crap. She unmasked the names and spread it around. It's like throwing a bag of weed in the middle of the street in Section 8 housing in broad daylight. See how long it sits there.
Is there any truth to that?
I can't get into any specific reports. I don't know what Devin Nunes reviewed at the White House. What I can say is that there is an established process for senior national security officials to ask for.
Wait. Just wait. You know sooner or later your name is going to come up. And you know, I know, she knows that she's been doing her level best to consult with everyone, as many people as possible that are still aligned in the intelligence community to discover whether or not her name is going to come up. And if it does, what she's going to do about it and what kind of a tactic that is going to be employed on her part. She has still access to all of these people, and all it takes is a phone call or a face-to-face meeting to have her questions answered.
For the identity of U.S. persons in these reports. To get beyond that, Andrea, is to disclose classified information, and those people who are doing that are doing something very wrong.
Did the pace accelerate during the transition, perhaps in early December, perhaps when the president ordered an investigation into the hacking, the Russian hacking? Did the pace of unmasking requests, of your unmasking requests, accelerate toward the end of the White House tenure?
And I can't say the pace of unmasking requests would accelerate, but if you're asking...
She didn't say did accelerate, she said would accelerate. You know what? I'm tired of listening to this bint lie. Because that's... okay. Maybe I should just go back and refer to sort of my fallback experts. I have some very interesting audio with two of my favorite people, Trey Gowdy and Tucker Carlson. Now, when you listen to this, think of the definition and the difference between the words wiretapped and surveilled.
So I don't really know what the purpose of all these statements from members of the committee are on both sides. I'm paying close attention. I'm totally confused. So can you just give us a quick summation of what we know for certain about spying on American citizens, including the Trump campaign?
Well, what we know is that if there is an evidentiary basis for the president's tweet, it has not been shared with the public. So we'll get that out of the way. The allegation was very specific. President Obama wiretapped Trump Tower.
Yes.
There is not an evidentiary basis for that. Where it gets a little more complicated.
Now even Trey Gowdy is parsing his words a little bit. You know what Trump meant, but being the good attorney he is, he's being quite literal.
There are surveillance methodologies that allow the collection of, hypothetically, foreign-to-foreign communications. And to the extent that U.S. citizens are mentioned or collected in that, in those surveillance programs, they're masked. And I think you want the information collected from a national security standpoint, but the masking is important. So with General Flynn, with the public reporting, is that he was unmasked. All right, that's not only a breach of protocol, that's a violation of the law. That's the felonious dissemination of classified material. What Chairman Nunes' point is, I want to know whether or not other people have been unmasked, even though you don't know about it publicly yet.
Interesting, but it would be known in the intelligence community. So my understanding from watching Director Comey is that intel agencies reporting to the Obama White House initiated an investigation of people around candidate Trump before his inauguration. Is that your understanding?
It is not, and I would be surprised if anybody could confirm that. There's a warrant process that you have to go through with the FISA court, and it has to be approved. And again, there's a public record of all of this, Tucker, which would be in the custody of the now Trump Department of Justice. So if there were an evidentiary basis for that, it's pretty easy to lay that out. There's a paper trail.
Why would Director Comey be willing to reveal the existence of some investigations but not comment on others?
That was really surprising to me. If you remember what he said, he sought special dispensation from the Department of Justice to confirm not just a counterintelligence investigation, but one that may manifest itself with criminality. But yeah.
Yes, why did Director Comey decide that he could throw Trump under the bus, but he couldn't reveal that he was going after the leakers? Can you think of any other reason other than politics?
When I asked him about the leaks, he said he could not confirm that there was an investigation. I think they're both of national interest. One happens to be a felony. So I was a little surprised and a little disappointed that he can't at least tell us we are investigating the felonious dissemination of classified material.
And yet he can tell us other things that may suit the agendas of others. It seemed bizarre. Now, we interviewed someone on this show last week who spent 30 years at NSA, Mr. Binney, who said that there is no question that the NSA has personal communications from then-candidate Trump and those around him on its servers. Do you think that that's true?
It depends. It depends on who they're talking to. If you are talking to someone for whom the intelligence agencies are authorized to collect, then yes, you may be captured on it. If there is a reason to collect on a non-U.S. citizen and you happen to call that person, then you would be collected as a U.S. citizen. That's where the masking and treating it confidentially comes into effect.
But he was saying, and again, he worked there for all those years, that NSA collects basically all data coming in and out of the United States because they've tapped into the main data trunk. And the question is, what do they do with it? But they have it. Is that your understanding? Is that true?
I think that's a little broader than what my understanding is. You would have to get a warrant. If you're talking about U.S. citizen, you have to get a warrant, application, FISA court. If you are talking foreign to foreign, it's a separate analysis. If you're talking U.S. to foreign, it's still a separate analysis and one that would require going to the FISA court.
So my last question, you sit on the committee that oversees our intelligence agencies. Are you satisfied that if you request a specific accounting of something that you're going to get it, you're going to get a straightforward answer and get the entire answer?
I don't know that I would, Tucker, and I'm not dodging your question. There's something called the Gang of Eight. They are entitled to information that even HPSI members are not.
Members of the committee would receive that information, you think?
Speaker of the House, the minority leader, ranking member, and the chairman of HPSI are four in the Gang of Eight. If you're just a HPSI member like I am,
I get it, but you think they can get whatever they want and they can get the full story and the intel agencies will give it to them and feel the obligation to give it to them?
They should, and I only...
They should. Stop. Trey Gowdy's a good guy. He's a politician. I love to watch him at work. He is stellar doing what he does when he's the inquisitor. But what do you have when you possess a government that, for any number of reasons, tells its ranking members that we can't reveal to you what's actually going on? If not to them or the president, then who?
Having it by saying should, because when one source has the information, the other's requesting it, you never know what you're not
Well,
given,
you never
but
do
they
know
should.
that. And that's the concern for ordinary voters.
Yes, you never know what you weren't given. So do you think Director Comey held anything back? John Brennan held anything back? I think you can answer that question yourself.
Me?
Yes, sir.
Congressman, thanks for coming on. I
Yes,
appreciate
sir.
it.
Thank you.
So confused. So I don't really know what the purpose of all.
So please note, however, I'd like to point this out, that at no point did Trey Gowdy or has anyone trustworthy denied that the NSA is not hoovering up like a massive vacuum cleaner every bit of digital take available in the United States and abroad, if for no other reason than to make it available to certified authorities when requested. Because here's the deal. You can't request it if it isn't there. Cogitate on that just a bit. Let the rocks rattle around in your brain pan. Also interesting is Judge Napolitano. You already know that if you listen to the BZ's Berserk Bobcat Saloon, he's one of my favorite go-to guys, and he's back on Fox News. I wonder what he has to say.
Here with reaction is Fox News senior judicial analyst Judge Andrew Napolitano. Judge,
morning.
did she do anything illegal here?
It depends on what she did with the information that she unmasked. She is entitled to this.
All right, let me qualify. She is Susan Rice.
As the president's national security advisor, has the highest level of national security clearance. So if General Flynn is talking to the Russian ambassador and that conversation is recorded, is surveilled, because the government wants to know what the Russian ambassador is saying to whomever he's speaking, and she needs to know to whom the ambassador was speaking in order to understand the conversation, she can do that. Can she reveal the identity of the American for a purpose other than national security? Absolutely not. Can she ask for more Americans involved and then unmask them and say to her boss, by the way, guess what Trump and Manafort were talking about last night? You know what that's called? That's called espionage. That's called the failure to safeguard top secret information. The identity of Americans incidentally caught up in otherwise lawful surveillance is protected by the top secret protection, the highest level of classification of secrets that we have.
Listen to that again.
What that's called? That's called espionage involved, and then unmask them and say to her boss, by the way, guess what Trump and Manafort were talking about last night? You know what that's called? That's called espionage. That's called the failure to safeguard top secret information. The identity of Americans incidentally caught up in otherwise lawful surveillance is protected by the top secret protection, the highest level of classification of secrets that we have. This is the same crime that Hillary Clinton probably committed by her failure to safeguard top secret information when she was Secretary of State.
This is very troubling because if you use the apparatus of the intel community to do something bad to your political opponents or to surveil them for political advantage, that is everything that FISA was not supposed to be.
Stop. Now, did the light go on over your little head at this point like it did on mine? Because my head is very fat. I wear a size 8 helmet when I was a motor officer, which is a big fat head. Did the light go on? Did it make you wonder, okay, we mentioned Hillary Clinton. Is it possible that some of the information that we've been speaking of recently with regard to masking and unmasking, with regard to the surveillance of President Trump, then President-elect Trump, and Michael Flynn and other members of Trump's campaign and organization, is it possible that some of that information, including the collusion and the communication between all of those people, was some of the material that was on Hillary Clinton's server, and that's specifically what no one wants to touch? Did you think about that?
Correct. It's also hacking and it's espionage. Each time it's done. So the FBI must examine this, and she must be challenged as to why she needed this information and what she did with it. She only had one boss. She only reported to one person. We all know who that was. That was the President of the United States.
Right, and reportedly, a lot of these conversations had nothing to do, or actually none of the stuff somebody saw, according to sources in the press today, had to do with Russia.
Stop. Let me make this connection as well. It was just revealed that Susan Rice answered as National Security Advisor to President Barack Hussein Obama. She only answered to one individual, President Obama. If it's discovered that she was involved in espionage or collusion or leaking in any way whatsoever, that then becomes a direct connection to the President of the United States, Barack Obama.
So there's no national security interest.
If there's no national security involvement, then she has no right to examine it, and she has no right to reveal it, even if the revelation is not in public,
Judge, don't you
even
know
if the
she's
revelation
going to
is
get away
in
with
private.
this, though, right? She can always say she did have a national security interest because they were checking to see if he was colluding with Russia.
You know,
that's all she has to say, and she gets away with it, right?
Well, no, she can say what she wants, but the FBI, when they're investigating this, should challenge her as to whether or not what she's saying is true. Right. Think about what happened. The President of the United States and his National Security Advisor were obtaining transcripts of the President-elect and his potential National Security Advisor and other transcripts. Could you imagine if George W. Bush and Condoleezza Rice had done this to President-elect Obama?
Holy fook. Can you imagine the storm? We'd be talking about it today, and trust me, there would be arses in prison.
The political earthquake would still be palpable.
And now maybe we know what Trump was talking about in that tweet.
I think we do.
Maybe some Democrats will come out against this as well.
I'm waiting for them.
Yeah.
We'll see.
All right, Judge, thank you.
But see, that's the difference between wiretapping and surveillance. President Trump, he's not a politician, and he certainly doesn't know about espionage. As far as he was concerned, it was wiretapping. But wiretapping and surveillance are two different things. Wiretapping is extremely specific. Surveillance is rather broad. Here's another incredibly important aspect that I'm going to ask you to consider now. Don't forget, I believe the spying on Donald Trump actually began back in 2011. Why would that be? Because Donald Trump was seriously considering running for president in 2012. Trump was already causing headaches for Obama because of the birth certificate issue and because Trump became involved in opposing Obama's policies. Trump, after all, he spoke at CPAC in 2011. That's called a clue. Then there's this issue. The point of it, to Barack Obama, the whole thing, the issue was so important to him that he decided to attend the May 1st, 2011 White House Correspondents' Dinner where Donald Trump would be in attendance in lieu of monitoring the assault and capture of Osama bin Laden's compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan, the same night by SEAL Team 6. Of course, a remarkably singular event in the history of the nation. But Obama spent most of his speech at that dinner attacking Donald Trump. Jack Posobiec indicates that Obama had, at that time, Donald Trump under surveillance as a private citizen for political purposes only. No security issues were involved because he perceived that Donald Trump was going to run against him as president in 2012. 2011 was also a very significant year for the Obama administration because overall he was simultaneously spying on Angela Merkel and other world leaders that year. This is also 2011, when Obama changed the rules of intercept material by the U.S. government. That's when he began changing them, because he was going up potentially against Donald Trump. But here's the bottom line, in my opinion, and I'm going to go long, but just by a few minutes, so I'm not going to play a commercial. This won't take long. The bottom line is this, in my opinion. What started out in the big grand scheme of life under the Imperial Obama as an intent to link Trump and his assistants to Mother Russia in order to delegitimize his entire presidency and keep him from conducting the business necessary to enable his goals. Obama and all of his little sniveling jackanapes may have inadvertently, by doing that, laid a path of digital and oral wreckage right back to themselves, which could yield potentially depositions, subpoenas, grand juries, indictments, and perhaps even criminal prosecutions. In other words, his little arrangement, Barack Obama's little arrangements of mines and minefields, may, in fact, have supremely backfired against him. Another little tidbit before we go. Michael Flynn recently requested immunity. He was going to spill all. So when it was indicated to the mainstream maggots, the American media maggots, oh my God, Michael Flynn is requesting immunity. This is terrible. He must be guilty. Calm down. Let's not forget that he was chucked under the proverbial political bus, politically speaking, just a few minutes ago. He'd be a D.C. moron not to lawyer up, considering what's happened to him in the past. And also, I'd like to point this out because the American media maggots won't. I'd like you, let's not forget how many persons in the Obama administration requested either immunity or invoked the Fifth Amendment. Let's start out with the most obvious. First, 5 million illegals were granted immunity under Barack Hussein Obama. Hello. Second, just how many Obama officials pleaded the Fifth in major cases? I happen to have all of them, and I'm going to give you details before we go away. That'd be 7 of them. Number 1, Jeff Neely, the former Pacific Rim Regional Commissioner for the General Services Administration, pled the Fifth on April 16th of 2012 when Congress asked him to testify about overly lavish spending on GSA conferences. He was eventually sentenced to prison for fraud. Number 2, John Beale, a former official at the EPA, pled the Fifth on October 1st, 2013, when Congress probed into Beale's theft of nearly $900,000 worth of salaries and bonuses from his own agency. Number 3, John Sepulveda, a former VA official, pled the Fifth on October 30th, 2013, after Congress subpoenaed him to testify as to why the department spent $6 million on conferences in Florida. Hey, your taxpayer dollars at work. Number 4, Diana Rubens and Kimberly Graves, 2 senior officials in the Department of Veterans Affairs, each pled the Fifth before Congress on November 2nd, 2015, when asked to testify about $400,000 they had allegedly milked out of a VA relocation expense program. Oh, but fear not, they were eventually given back their jobs. Isn't that great? Number 5, Greg Roseman, a deputy director of the IRS, pled the Fifth on June 26, 2013, after Congress asked him to testify about why the largest contract in IRS history was awarded to a close friend of his. Number 6, Patrick Cunningham, chief of the criminal division of the U.S. Attorney's Office in Arizona, pled the Fifth when Congress asked him to testify about Operation Fast and Furious, which trafficked more than 2,000 guns and ended up killing a U.S. Border Patrol agent along the U.S.-Mexico border. Number 7, and most infamous of all, Lois Lerner, an IRS director in charge of tax exemptions, pled the Fifth numerous times during a congressional investigation into the IRS's targeting of conservative groups. So what do we take from that? Well, hey, we're supposed to assume absolutely nothing about that, right? We should assume nothing. Isn't that correct?
Monsieur has been locked
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, thanks for listening to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon. I could have called it the ballroom. On the SHR Media Network. You want to contact me? You'll find me on Twitter at bzepp and on my blog at bloviatingzeppelin.net. My original intro music is by Possessed Tranquility. You can find them at reverbnation.com. Promotional consideration by Lockheed Martin Skunkworks and the Boeing Company at If It Ain't Boeing, I Ain't Going. Tiaras by My Little Pony. Thanks to my personal KC-135 Kettle One refueling team, who I will be contacting in less than an hour from now at the home of BZ. And they did me well earlier this morning, right after the Ken McClinton show, although I wasn't too silly at that time. Hey, Sackheads Radio is on tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you ever so kindly for listening live, interacting in chat. Please always come to chat, and thank you for listening in podcast. God bless, take care, put it all together. Be an informed American. God bless.
Everybody quiet down now and get some sleep.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Mama. Good night, Ben.
Good night, everyone. Good night, Mama. Good night, Daddy.
Good night, children.
Good night, Daddy. Good night, Elizabeth.
Good night, John Boy. Good night, Jim Bob. Good night, Jim Bob.
Good night, Jim Bob.
What's going on? I was asleep. What's everybody doing?
Good night,
Jim Bob.
Good night, and good luck.